Hello and welcome to TelecomTV. I'm Martin Warwick. We're out of London for a change. We're in San Francisco, actually in the Moscone Centre in downtown, and I'm talking with Saar Gillai, who is Senior Vice President, Chief Operating Officer of HP Cloud, and also the General Manager of NFV. So that's quite a mouthful and a lot of titles. You've got, it seems like, several jobs rolled into one.
Pretty much, but they're all interrelated, so that makes it easier.
Okay. What makes NFV a natural fit for you to lead?
Sure. Well, in the last 2 years, I've been really doing a lot of the cloud work at HP, getting a lot of the cloud. You see Helion and all the things HP's been doing in cloud.
Yep.
Was OpenStack. But in fact, if you look at my career, I've spent most of my career, actually over 20 years, in telecom and networking. I was at Newbridge, who used to be, for those who remember, and at Cisco. So actually the combination of both telecom and cloud is really the right spot for me because I'm in from both worlds. So I'm really excited to be now driving this business at HP.
What do you think are the most important that CSP should be asking themselves as far as NFV is concerned?
Sure. Well, there's definitely a lot of action in NFV, and so a lot of questions come up. I think one of the questions that I hear a lot is, how ready is the cloud in terms of carrier requirements and telecom requirements? That's certainly something that comes a lot. There's also a question about, okay, what should I virtualize first? NFV is about virtualization of functions. What should I do first? And then there's always the issue of, you guys talk about open. Why is open important? Is it really important, or is this the marketing thing?
Precisely. Well, that's a good question. I'll ask you another one on that then. We've heard many times, you and I will have experienced this in our lifetime in this industry, is we hear lots and lots about open initiatives, open standards, etc., etc. And when it comes to the nitty-gritty, there's nothing of the sort, because big proprietary companies and big proprietary systems come in and stop it in its tracks. This time around, there seems to be an enormous momentum truly behind open. Why is that?
Well, I think in general, if you look at the IT world, including telecom, the world has changed, and a lot of things have happened over the last few decades, whether it's open source, whether some of the cloud capabilities and so forth. They've changed the dynamic in terms of the vendors and the customers. The customers have a lot more say, and obviously the customers want choice. HP has been leading the charge for choice for a long time, so we're actually very comfortable with that development. And if in fact you look at what we do in cloud, what we've done in other places, around OpenStack, what we do in sort of, in SDN in terms of the ONF, or what we do in Open Daylight and Ethernet. So we've always been very much pushing in this area, but there's been a lot of shifts in the industry that have made it better. And at the end of the day, if you look at what vendors want, this is what they want. Now, of course, there's compromises around that, but they do want to have choice because, what they're trying to get is better flexibility and better cost points, and it's been kind of proven that when you have choice, you can drive in that direction.
Not one of the stumbling blocks, one of the challenges is getting to carrier-grade telco cloud. There's been a lot of iffing and butting about whether or not it's possible given the way telcos work as opposed to data centers. How's that going?
Well, I think the good news is, this is an important point, obviously. Anybody who's been involved in telecom, right, they've spent the last decades talking about carrier-grade, SLAs, building their systems was blood, sweat, and tears. And so this is not just a spec. They actually need this to run their services and to meet their SLAs. And so obviously, as we're looking at moving to a scale-out architecture, there's a lot of concern about this. The good news is, I think we do understand it. And so, the first part of the problem is understanding the challenges. And there's been a lot of technology that's been pushed in there to move it, and whether it's in terms of making OpenStack and some of those things better, whether it's in terms of working on KVM, working on SLAs. And so I think we're making good progress there as an industry. And are we there 100% yet? No, we're not there yet, but we're moving very fast there. I think people will be surprised how fast we get there because, again, there is the foundational understanding. And if you look at some of the things that have happened, and even in the sort of the scale-out cloud, they are now getting to that level of scale that's required. And so, it's not going to be just an easy walk in the park, but I think people will be surprised how fast we get there. It's around the corner.
Interesting you should say that, because SDN and NFV came from nowhere. They seem to be thrown fully formed into the world, didn't they? They came out of nothing very, very quickly over a couple of years. Well, maybe not SDN, but NFV certainly. Over the past couple of years. You don't agree?
Well, these things always appear like they come, but there's always someone working in the corner. People have always, I always try to look at, okay, what is the reason? Why are people trying to do it, right? Because at the end of the day, it's a business. And, SDN comes from people wanting to have more flexibility in their network and not be tied to the hardware. And funny enough, NFV is the same thing. People have been stacking more and more boxes, and they're saying, well, Do we really want to continue stacking boxes? Meanwhile, they look at the cloud world and IT world and they go, well, there's something over there. I mean, it's not carrier grade, but it's interesting. So there are these sort of formative trends that are enabling that. And then all of a sudden it all comes together and people say, wow, it's here. But there's been people working on this. I mean, NFV, I think carriers have been talking about trying to do something like this for a long time. It's just that the technologies are now enabling to actually implement it.
Yeah, because we're coming to the end of the first phase of NFV, are we not? We must be by now, because we've seen the intellectual challenge of it. We've seen it going from the sort of informative to the normative. You're seeing, you know, now it's gone to proofs of concept.
Absolutely.
And presumably from proofs of concept in due course, but pretty soon you're going to have commercial deployment of one sort or another.
Yes, I mean, absolutely. I think, first of all, I think the key is there's high motivation here. This is not a solution looking for a problem. We understand what we're trying to do here. You know, carriers are looking for a lot more flexibility, you know, in terms of providing services to their customers without doing truck rolls, and in terms of having the agility that some of these new technologies provide that they see in IT, giving them that agility to do. And so that actually provides them great capabilities, not only from a cost perspective, but also from a service rollout perspective, from a, you know, not only from cost, but also in terms of revenue. And so there is high motivation to do that, and so that has driven the industry and helped a lot. We are doing a lot of POCs that are going very well. You know, we now have, I think, about 16 declared POCs. There's a few other ones as well that we're doing. And so, yeah, it's moving very well.
Good. $64,000 question or more, 64 million or more. You must know this. What are carriers thinking about virtualizing first?
So I think the important part here is what are you focused on, right? And really, when you think about virtualizing, it's back to, okay, what problem I'm trying to solve. It's never a good idea to virtualize something just because you can, or just because it's easiest. That's sometimes a mistake that people make. And so when we talk about the value of NFV, really the big value here is the ability to roll out things faster, to get the agility. And so the areas that we see, and we've seen with the carriers, that they can get the most benefit are things like CPE, so getting a virtual CPE, because getting subscribers more capabilities without truck rolls. You know, IMS is also an area where there's a lot of flexibility that you can get from virtualization. The mobile RAN as well, and is SDN, and also in the CDN area. So those are areas. It's not only the areas, but those are areas that we're seeing a lot of activity because there's ability to roll out new things quickly, and we're definitely pushing a lot in that area, and you'll see some things from us there as well.
Now, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and there's more than one way to build an NFV environment. We talked briefly about HP's position and commitment to openness and open standards. How important is that to your offering when you're making products for your customers?
So there's different ways to sort of define how you're going to differentiate. One way, which is more of the way that historicals and some companies do, is say, okay, we're going to lock this in and then we're going to get them.
Precisely.
And you know, in the past decades, you've seen various database companies and other people do that. And it's worked for a certain amount of time, but it hasn't made the customers excited about it. And so they were like, yeah, you got me now, but as soon as I can get out of this, I'm out of this. We do not look at that, and historically, if you look at HP's offerings, haven't really differentiated that way. We differentiate on having the best product, having good solutions, having global reach, being able to work with customers, partner them, having an open ecosystem. If you look at our solutions NFV, they involve a lot of partners. That's how we compete, and so the open thing comes naturally to us because that's how we differentiate. We don't differentiate by locking people in. The good news for us and the industry is, you know, again, there's been a few generations here and customers now figure this out and they're definitely pushing very hard, and I think you'll see a lot of the wins and choice points are going to be focused on, okay, who is really providing me choice versus PowerPoints? And, you know, we're working very hard on that area. I think some of the industry is also doing that as well. Because NFV is an ecosystem play, right? Not everybody, not everyone's going to have all the VNFs. Not everyone's going to have all the pieces, right? And so by definition, you have to build an open system for this to work for the carriers.
How important then is open NFV labs in this whole context?
Well, that's definitely something that we're investing a lot in terms of labs, because, you know, carriers, it's a process, and they got to test stuff, and they got to test interoperability, and you got to test applications. And so one of the things that HP as a global company can do is provide that capability. And so that's something that we've done. We already have them rolled worldwide. We have some in Israel, we have some in the US, we have some in Europe, and we're already open now for customers to come in there and vendors to come in there and do interoperability testing. And that way, obviously, by the time it gets to the POC, it actually works. And also vendors, you know, software vendors, startups, and so forth, who are providing very unique capabilities can come there and test their stuff without having to have very high investments. And so it makes it easier for people to innovate in this industry. And really, NFV is about innovation. It's about getting that fast innovation that's available in IT and getting it into the service provider. So that getting labs to enable people to do that is really important.
A final question to you before the dancing girls arrive, or whatever's going to come around the corner.
Exciting.
Like to look forward. We've been talking about the imminence of real, beyond proof of concept, NFV, SDN. You've just joined the team. What do you think is going to be happening this time next year as far as HP's NFV and SDN is offering?
Well, you know, it's always dangerous to make predictions because people tend to overestimate the short term and underestimate the long term, but we're in the long game here at NFV. I mean, I think given that we're in the POC stage, I think we'll be starting to see some deployments beyond the POCs. I think we'll see more and more POCs, but we're actually going to start to see some big deployments that people are going to start doing, obviously rolling out. We'll be getting to the trial phase and early deployments. And I think people will be able to quantify, which I think will be very important, just how much they're getting the benefit of it. Because that's at the end of the day, the end game here, which is, can I really show that I can roll out services faster, I can do that faster, and they'll be experiencing that during the POCs and trials. And so ultimately you'll see how that's starting to affect their ability to roll out services, which is really the end game here.
Okay. Before the music overwhelms us, we can't hear each other anymore, I'd just like to say, Saar Gillai, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you as well. Excited to be here.